And another very specific moment about polonium, it needs to be fresh prepared, because every moment it became half harmful. Polonium has to be fresh made. It was taken again from reactor, brought to London, and used against my husband Alexander.
So once you received all the documents in the UK, what was Alexander doing?
Of course, Sasha was not an ordinary person, and he worked against organized crime. Since, I believe, 2002, 2003, when Russian money just flowed to Europe, to UK, and it was very difficult to understand sometimes what this money came from. Was it just real business? Was it a crime money? And Sasha became practically very useful to explain where this money came from, connection between people from Russian government to people in organized crime, you can say real gangsters. And they accepted his consulting. And then it was a serious job doing in Spain just before 2006. He received this offer to work for Spanish authorities against organized crime from Russia.
Can you walk us through the events that happened on that day, on the 1st of November?
Everything was fine during the evening, but when it was midnight, he suddenly became sick, and it's never stopped after that. He couldn't breathe, and his temperature was very low. When he was in hospital, and it was a lot of tests, and X-ray, everything, and I asked if I could take him back home. They said probably yes. But in few hours after all testing, they said, no, we better to keep him here and just go home, and you can visit him next day. They found his immune system dropped almost to zero, and they decided this was a side effect of antibiotics. And they didn't know why. And only when in 10 days he started to develop all signs of radioactive illness. He could not eat, he hardly could drink because it was quite painful, but he stayed in a general like a practice. He was not isolated, and it was almost 10 days. He said to doctors, could you check me for poisoning from very beginning, because I have a political asylum. I escaped from Russia. I did work from Russian security service. I'm having very powerful enemies for what he said. I tried to be patient for all these 10 days, but in 10 days I said, anybody could tell me what happened to my husband. They called different doctors from different units, and one said he definitely looked as my patient, he was from cancer unit. And when they tried to check him for radioactivity, they couldn't find nothing. But he was taken to another unit, and they sent his blood examples for another test. And when they first time realized he was poisoned.
What did he talk about in those days to you?
We talk a lot about when he left hospital, what we're going to do. We try to talk about future. And because he couldn't eat, and his dream again was when he will return back home, I will buy him pineapple and I will cut it to small pieces and I'll put it to fridge and he will eat it cold pieces and just enjoy it. We just try to talk about very normal stuff. But since then, Sasha's health became worse and worse, like every day. I could see him every day, became or weak or difficult to talk, but he still had 3 days to talk to police. It means police had all statements from Sasha when he said about his meetings, where he went, how he did it, and Sasha was professional and he knew what exactly you should say to help to investigate this case. It means as a person who was murdered, investigated his own case.
Do you remember what was the last thing he told you?
Day before, he was very weak, but it was not more interview with police. And again, he said just a few words. And when I was ready to go home, I said, Sasha, I just go home because Anatoly is waiting for me. But tomorrow morning I'll be here and I will be with you. And he just told me, Marina, I love you. When I came back home and almost on midnight, I received a call from police who told me, Marina, we should talk to you. I said, now, at midnight, after you know what happened. And they said, no, we insist, we have to talk to you. And when they arrived, they explained to me, is this radioactive material, it's polonium-210. They never ever had in their practice this kind of murder weapon.
In terms of polonium, who actually has access to it? It's not like regular people could get polonium in their hands.
Polonium-210 is a radioactive material you could find only in an atomic station or reactor. And to dose what was used for Sasha, it was a very big amount. And another very specific moment about polonium, it needs to be fresh prepared, because every moment it became half harmful. Polonium has to be fresh made. It was taken again from reactor, brought to London and used against my husband Alexander.
What happened after that to you and your son? What did you have to do?
It was difficult for Anatoly to decide to go to school straight after, and he couldn't go straight after because we should be checked, or we poisoned polonium, or again, how it might affect people around you. I was waiting for test results for 3 days. It was the most difficult time for me because if it's something bad and I will die, not maybe like Sasha, but quite soon. And Anatoly, who was 12 years old, what is happening to him? And when I met people from Health Protection Agency saying to me, Marina, you have trace of polonium. It's quite noticeable, but it's not, you're not going to die now. It might increase a level of getting cancer, but it's all individual. And what I did, I hugged this woman from Health Protection Agency and we cried. It was very emotional. And after testing Anatoly, he was testing too. It was not any polonium at all, goodness. I couldn't go to home almost for 3 months because it was under police investigation. But when police said we've done and you can take your house back, but actually I couldn't. Everything was in these messages, how much radioactivity they could spot it. And if I want to go back to live in a house, I need to decontaminate it. And when it was asking how much it would cost to make this house be safe, price was £300,000. And of course, I couldn't pay. And this was only way to keep this house closed, and it would be natural, discontaminated. It took another 2.5 years to go back to this house.
So do you live in the same house now?
No, I couldn't live in this house anymore after that.
Before his death, did Alexander blame anyone?
When Sasha's still alive, and was two suggestions. First, take a picture of him. I was against, I didn't like to take this picture, and Sasha was very strong in his mind, and he said we have to. And then it was suggestion to write his statement. And his statement, he blamed directly Vladimir Putin of killing him. And he said incredible words. Now, after 15 years, it still be very important. He said, you might silence one person, but as a voice of crowd around the world will stay in your earth till end of your life. And now, in 15 years, we can see Putin might try to do anything to silence people, but not people became silent all around the world.
And who, in your opinion, is behind his poisoning?
I tried every time based on serious facts and arguments. I could be very emotional. I have all rights because my husband killed, murder, brutal, front of all this world by radioactive material. But after investigation, after public inquiry, when everything was provided, we have a very serious allegations. After public inquiry, it was saying Andrei Lugovoy and Dmitry Kovtun definitely killed my husband, Alexander Litvinenko. And this is very highly likely happened with the knowledge of Vladimir Putin, President of Russia, and former director of FSB, Nikolai Patrushev, who still be in a very high position. And this Russia stayed behind of this crime. Recently, we received a decision of European Court of Human Rights, and they proved exactly the same. They said is this Russia stayed behind of this crime.
Where are you now in your battle for justice?
First of all, we know it's almost months since we received this decision. Of course, Russia states they no, we never done it. And I just hope one day they will release their own statement and their opinion for what they believed happened. All these 15 years, I can't say I pushed very hard. It's all happened how it's supposed to happen. I exhausted all my legal rights. We couldn't provide a proper justice. It was inquest, and inquest became a public inquiry. We had this court in Europe, but I believe one day we will have a proper justice. People who committed this crime need to be on a trial. What I promised to Sasha, I promised to him if somebody wants to listen, and he asked me, please talking to them, please talking to people, say what happened to us. Might it help to people to prevent something, to protect them? I don't know. But I do what Sasha asked me. And because what I agreed to do, giving interview, meeting people, it means he always around. And what I'm happy, I gave him this life. And I feel sometimes I'm protecting by him too. Because my life was not miserable for these last 15 years. It was a lot of happiness. It was chance to see how our son became adult. It was not easy. It was very difficult. But it's exactly why I'm doing this. They killed Sasha physically, but he's still alive.
My heart is just beat. And I know that is if I arrested and sent back to North Korea, I just execute or prison camp.